I just couldn't finish a race. I was just went from being in the top 10 to not being able to finish. And I didn't know what was wrong with me.
His thyroid had quietly stopped working, but nobody knew that yet.
Thought it was in my head.
He came back, built a career as one of cycling's top performance coaches. And then it happened again.
When you burn out and you just get really sick for like 2 months, and I was just couldn't do anything, couldn't have worked a job if I'd wanted to. So I just kind of didn't do anything for 6 months, basically.
The man who prepared world-class athletes for their hardest moments couldn't get out of bed.
I can think of nothing worse now than being a pro cyclist.
So what does elite sport really cost?
If you've only known one thing, you don't know anything different, really.
This is Timmy K.
Hello humans, welcome to the M-Word podcast. Today brought to you by myself, just Martin Hall, and today I'm joined by Tim Kennaugh. Tim, thank you for joining me.
No worries, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. I appreciate your time. I know you're in sunnier climes than the Isle of Man, and we're definitely not jealous. So we want to start with maybe setting the scene. So obviously for locals on the Isle of Man, that they'll know, I'm sure, know yourself and perhaps some of the cycle or a lot of the cycling world, but just set the scene. Obviously, you were brought up in the Isle of Man. Your old man, who was a good cyclist, which I'm sure partly pushed the career you've ended up in now. So, what's your kind of early memories of kind of, let's say, the Isle of Man and certainly getting into cycling?
I'd say with cycling, just like my earliest memories are always having the Tour de France on in the house and being bored because my mum and dad and brother were really into cycling, and I just wanted to play football. And wasn't that interested, really, to be honest.
Okay.
It was only when I got to around, I suppose, 15 or something. I'd always go to the bike races and they'd bring my bike, and sometimes I'd race, sometimes I wouldn't. And then I think I did a TT when I was like 15 on the Isle of Man, and I think I won it. And then I was like, oh, this is nice. Like, I'm good at something, like, if you know what I mean. So then it encouraged me to take it more serious. And
did you play football, like, as well as watching it? So like the question, I guess, is, were you an athletic kid?
Yeah, I love sports, cross country, played for Union Mills and then Corinthians. Don't think I was as good as I thought I was, to be honest, but I enjoyed playing.
None of us probably are in reflection, are we?
No, exactly.
So then getting into the cycling, it was then just starting immersing yourself more in the racing. And I didn't race around, or wasn't racing around the time, but certainly chatting with some of the lads, who were certainly very talented. So early on, was it like, oh, I'm quite good at this, starting going away racing in the UK, representing the Isle of Man? Was that kind of hockey stick happen quite quickly?
Yeah, pretty much. I was, invited onto the British cycling system, like talent team, which was for under 16s. And then first year junior, I never made it onto the Olympic development program. But I remember going to the first kind of national series and winning the race. And that was my first time where I was like racing against people like Luke Rowe and Mark Christian was there. They were 1 year older than me. And I remember thinking like, oh, wow, I can't believe it. Like then I was like, oh, this is good. Then I got onto the Olympic development program, which is under 19s, and then the under 23 team, where we were based in Italy, where Peter and Cav were living at the time. And yeah, then around 19 years old, I just couldn't finish a race. I went from being in the top 10 to not being able to finish. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought it was in my head. And I just packed it in, moved back to the Isle of Man. And eventually they found out that my thyroid wasn't working. I had like an autoimmune disease. So that explains why I put on a little weight. I felt like crap.
And like at the time, and I mean, a lot of sports, certainly as you get more to the point, and becomes a mind thing. So during that time, is that just like messing with your head, because obviously what you consider form goes out the window. You're trying to rationalize and reason. Do you end up overtraining because you're thinking you just lost form, or was the kind of doctors around you trying to find a particular issues you had ultimately?
Well, first things first, when I moved on to the GB Academy, I went from being in the Isle of Man based and racing away. being with my friends from school. And then I moved to Manchester at the age of 17 because I was now in the under 23 category, but I was 17 still. And I'm living in an apartment in Manchester, training 3 times a day sometimes. Couldn't keep the weight on. I was just training so much I couldn't eat enough. And then I hated cycling all of a sudden because I didn't enjoy living in that environment. I hated it. Like them, they're some of my worst years I can remember. Them years.
And
Yeah.
you look nowadays, and it seems to be, and this is from a 1,000 miles away, that almost professionals are living professionally from the age of 12, 13, and when they're getting onto academies, they're almost accustomed to that lifestyle. Should we call it that? Do you think that's like in the modern? While maybe it's got then the benefits of when that let's call it that academy lifestyle starts, they're used to it, but obviously then they're missing out on an element of childhood as well because they're weighing their food at 14 and 15. Do you think that's a challenge in the sport at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge. There's also more than one ways of doing things. I think what's maybe better now is, although the development starts really young with more high performance, it's a lot more individualized, the training load, etc. Where when I was on the under 23 academy, we all did the same training. Like I was a skinny 17-year-old and I was doing the same training as like Andy Fenn, who was he was like 6 foot and massive. So it's a lot more individualized now. But again, people are still getting as the trends come to spotting talent early. I think it's also the other way that some talent's getting missed that's maybe later developers or later to the sport.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I guess teams are, and that's something again, observing at a distance, it seems to be obviously teams are looking for the next talent. They want to get the young talent, I guess, signing them cheaper as well, getting them on board and getting them in their regime. But yeah, potentially, and I'm sure we could think of a few riders from the Isle of Man, someone like Max, who's probably entered the sport fairly late, or mid to late, rather than or got into a professional team. That I'm sure there are those opportunities or those riders that get missed, which is a shame. So you come back to the Isle of Man. Are you totally disenfranchised by cycle, or you certainly come back from Italy? Are you disenfranchised from cycling at that stage?
Well, yeah, I thought, well, that's me finished. I also just, when you're a kid, you just don't have a clue about the world. Like I went to work in a bank and was earning like £800 a month. And that never crossed my mind. I just thought you like got a job and like went and rented your own apartment and had money to spend for some reason.
No.
And I remember being back on the Isle of Man with an underactive thyroid that I still don't know about, trying to do like a personal trainer course, but not in my lunch break at the bank, but not being able to finish it because I'm having like 10 coffees a day, can't keep my eyes open. Then I went to the World Championships that Cav won in Copenhagen. Cav won it, and I spoke to Rod Ellingworth after the race, and I was super like fat in the face. And he was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, give me a call in a week or so." And he got me in touch with John Herity, Rapha Condor, and John signed me to his team. He sent me for a medical, and that's when they found my thyroid problem, basically.
Okay. And the signing to the team, was that on the basis, was that to ride, to help, to support, to do performance stuff?
That was to ride. But John knew straight away from the medical that I wouldn't be able to ride. So he still paid me like a small salary for 12 months and then offered me a job as a soigneur the year later. So
nice. That was nice. Okay, so really, if you look at sliding door moments, that's that sliding door that put you, I guess, down that performance route.
Oh, 100%. If it wasn't for John Herity, I don't know what I'd be doing right now.
Yeah, right. It's interesting then that obviously meeting Rob and Rob putting you in touch, and you're obviously still passionate about cycling, I guess, at that stage, even if you felt you're maybe a bit bad and bruised from the I guess the challenges of putting the weight on and not knowing what the problem was ultimately.
Yeah, well, you don't know any different, do you? Like when I was 12, I wanted to be in the army, but I can think of nothing worse than being in the army now. Like I'd hate it. Like when I was 17, I wanted to be a pro cyclist, where I can think of nothing worse now than being a pro cyclist. When I was working as a coach and a high performance, I could think all I wanted to do was be the best coach. And it's only now that I've stepped away for 12 months that I can see there's other things to life as well. So I think sometimes if you've only known one thing, you don't know anything different, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So JLT, for those that don't know, I think we're a British registered team. I guess did the pro scene in the UK, and I guess maybe some European, a bit of European riding.
So these were the best years. I love these years.
Okay.
JLT Condor were
Like the wonder years.
yeah, I was just dead young and just loved it. And they were like, so they raced in the UK, like the Criterium circuit and the Premier Calendars, like, and they also raced in Australia, America, Asia. So it was great. You'd go away to like Japan and Taiwan and Korea, and it was so good. It was great.
Right. And as a swan year, what are you doing for the team?
Massage, making bottles. I don't think
Right.
I was even good. Like I think John just kept me around, keep me in the sport. And John was great. Like John would have me. John was always teaching me. So even when I was swanneering, instead of putting me in the feed zone, he'd put me in the team car with him, so I could
Okay.
see how to drive the team car in the convoy. John paid for me to go to get my UCI license when I was like 20, 21, 22, so I could be a sports director. So I knew how to drive in the convoy, knew the rules. John would send me to, this is even when I was a swannier, he'd send me to like a small stage race in Ireland with all the young riders of the team and like make me the DS and manager and just leave me to do it all on my own. Like John was so good at developing me without me realizing.
And yeah, and I guess then was there any like direct conversations, or was that just he could obviously see an opportunity here, and obviously then empower you to take on these opportunities?
I never thought, and looking back, I don't think I didn't notice at the time, and I'm not sure John even noticed. I think he just liked me and could see that I was getting into trouble at home, and he just kept me around long enough until I figured out what I was going to do with my life, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, I started coaching privately on my own, and all I wanted to do was earn €1,000 a month to go and live in Cambodia. Like this was my dream, you know. Like,
Right.
like when you're 21 and you think that's going to be like sustainable. And yeah, I was coaching a few of the JLT riders then that were paying me privately, and then we got a increase in sponsorship the following year. We hadn't done well the year before, and me and John were kind of just discussing, and I was like, "Oh, you really need an internal coach, so all the riders' programs are aligned." And John said, "Oh, do you want to do it?" And that was my first real like look into kind of high performance.
Yeah. Okay. And at that level, bearing in mind the UK, and it's obviously doing some international. What did that look like?
For me, it was great because I had John there who was really experienced. You had me there that was really inexperienced but full of motivation and ideas. I had my brother who was in Team Sky, so I was getting to see a lot of what they were doing, and obviously they were quite cutting edge at the time. So I was trying to like see what things I could take from there and implement. And it was just great. Even, you know, we'd go to Australia and race the crits in January, and we were obviously spending the winter in the UK, and we would, you know, just do like heat acclimatization protocols and all this kind of stuff. And it wasn't as scientific as it is now, but it was just great to have a chance to just experience it. Like my main job was basically coaching, say, I don't know, if there were 16 riders, maybe I coached 8 or 10 of them, and helping John with the race calendar, which riders go to where, and signings. And then when we were doing a double calendar, like say there was a race on in Taiwan and the UK, sometimes I'd go and do like the Tour of Taiwan as the DS.
Yeah. Okay. And did you always enjoy the traveling aspect of the role?
Yeah, I loved it because I love traveling anyway. Like in my spare, if there's one thing I would spend my disposable income on, it would be going away to different countries. So for me to be being paid to go to Colorado and Utah or Adelaide or Melbourne, it was amazing. Or to go to you'd go to Korea and you'd go to the most random places that you'd never ever go on holiday, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
it was when you're 22, you love it. It's great, and you're full of energy.
And the run,
you can work and go out after. and like socialize. And then as you get older, obviously, now you're like, God, do I have to go to Korea? I don't want to go. I don't want to fly long haul. But when you're a kid, you
Yeah.
get on.
Yeah, where's my sleep mask and my moisturizer? That's the priority now. Okay, so then the opportunity then to go to pro level, how did that come about, to pro tour level?
John's team was kind of not guaranteed a sponsorship the following year. And I was just trying to see what was out there. I hadn't really approached any pro tour teams, hadn't really crossed my mind that anyone would really take me. I'd emailed every governing body of like developing nations to with my CV and explaining what I could do for them. And then I was in Singapore. I was actually traveling, backpacking around Sri Lanka, I think, or India, I can't remember. And I flew over to Singapore to do like a presentation for them for Singapore cycling. And I remember having to like buy my shoes and my pants from the airport before I went in. And it's so funny when you're young and you just do things, you know. And like as you get older, you become more scared of like doing random things. And as I was in the airport to fly back to the Philippines, I can't remember where I was, somewhere in Asia. And Jonathan Briekveld, who's like one of the managers from EF, called me and said, am I interested in coming to work for them? So that was basically it.
Yeah, and that opportunity. I know you did a master's degree. What like if you look in your timeline, where's this fit in with this kind of era you started? Is this something you're thinking about? What's going to happen?
Last year I did that.
Okay, right. So it was just looking back, obviously you've learned a lot, I suppose, on the job training. Was this just academic study to back up what you've learned on the job?
Yeah, I think when I first started out coaching, there was lots of coaches, ex-pros that were coaching that didn't have any kind of necessarily academic background. And I could just see the way the sport's going. Like now you look around and almost everyone's got a master's or a PhD. So I didn't think I needed it at that moment. I just wanted to kind of like future-proof myself or have it in case I needed it in the future. Which was it was such a challenge doing it around the job, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask again. I guess people listening, you're in a high performing job, you're busy, and then you're trying to upskill yourself further, I guess, as well, and add to that. So is that just again enough drive and motivation to find the time to do the studying and the qualification?
I was just really far behind all the time, and then I left Bahrain. I left Bahrain in May, I think, and then just committed fully to catching up.
Yeah, right. And digging in. So back join EF. So you've been on. Obviously, JLT was a pro setup. I guess this is another level. Was it a big? Was there a? Did you? If you look back, was it a big jump from JLT to EF?
Massive. Like the sports come. This was maybe 9. This was 8 years ago now. So first of all, going to EF was just I just wasn't ready. Basically, like it wasn't a super high performance team, and I was the performance manager in title, but my main roles, they didn't have internal coaches. Everyone was coached externally. One of my main roles was just communicating with the external coaches and updating the performance team on the kind of level of the riders, which was a great place for me to be, actually. I think if I'd gone into a bigger setup, I might have been like pigeonholed into a certain area. Where at EF, I was allowed to do a bit of everything, still doing a bit of de-essing, still being on the ground, organizing training camps, doing altitude camps for the first time. And then also, you know, communicating with all the different coaches and having access to all that data. I think it was as much as it was a big shock, I was having to stand and do presentations on the TTT for people like Rigoberto Urán, he was like my favorite cyclist, you know. I remember thinking like, I was nervous all the time. I had imposter syndrome, but it was a great experience, you know.
Yeah. It's interesting, the imposter syndrome. I said this recently to someone else, and it was a great quote. Someone said to me recently, having suffered from it as well. I think that they said, if you haven't got imposter syndrome, you're the imposter, which I think is a great. It's important to keep it under control, but it's also it's a good check and balance for your own ego, isn't it? But also, I think I'd say, and anyone listening, for someone who's presenting to high performance athletes, that you're obviously, you've got every right to feel that, but you're in the room for a reason, aren't you?
Yeah, I think looking back now, like after 6 years with Bahrain, like I'm such a more experienced. I'm also older. Like when I was at EF, I think I was 26, and now I'm 34. So, like, I'm much more confident about going into a room now of 20 cyclists and saying, right, guys, listen up. Where probably back then when I was 26, I was probably more nervous about that type of thing.
Would you like to watch a video of you presenting from 10 years ago?
Oh, I can't watch a video of me ever. Like, I won't watch.
Oh, right.
I did something for GCM last week.
Yeah.
It was only a small snippet, and I haven't watched it because it'll make me cringe, like hearing my own voice.
It's fine. It was fine. I've seen it and it's fine. Don't worry.
All right.
So EF into, how did the opportunity come with Bahrain? And was it more pigeonhole? You mentioned earlier, it wasn't pigeonhole. Was this more? Was it a narrower job description? Let's call it.
It was interesting actually because, like, McLaren were coming on board with Bahrain, and they were, really interested in making it one of the best high performance structures in cycling, and it was going to be coach led. Like EF was really DS led because they had external coaches. The performance team was mostly DSs, where Bahrain was going to be more like more coach led, where the coaches had bigger input on what was going on. So that really attracted me. And I think Rod Ellingworth was coming from Team Sky, I think it was at the time. And I imagine in his contract he couldn't take anybody with him from Team Sky, so he reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in going there.
Okay.
Which I was.
And the narrowing then of your day-to-day job, I assume based on what you said earlier with EF, there's external coaches for the athletes. At Bahrain, was it a mixture then, some or less, or was it very much Bahrain driven? And yeah, if you had external coaches, that was fine, but it was more Bahrain driven coaching from, I guess, your team?
Yeah, I think everybody was coached in-house apart from maybe Mikael Landa.
Right. And is that an athlete's choice? Do they have, I guess when they're signing contracts, do they have that choice, or it's like, with us, this is the way you do it?
I think it depends team to team. Like, for example, if your team's got a smaller budget and you want to attract riders and you can't necessarily afford to pay them the top rate in the transfer market, then you're more likely to give them concessions where you say, okay, you can be coached by who you want. Where if you're a team with a £50 million budget, and it depends on the culture of the team. And more, it's the norm that it's coached in-house. And personally, my philosophy is that that's the way it should be. How can you pay a rider £2 million and not have control over what they're doing?
Yeah, true. Yeah, you think about sport we talked about, or you mentioned football at the beginning. I guess, yeah. Okay, so then the other coaches around that. So if you're a performance coach, you then, I assume within the team you've got a nutritionist coach, you've got strength and conditioning coach, and the other ones, and you're all collectively working as a team then, and being that glue within the cycling team. Because I guess if I compared that to if that wasn't the case, the cyclist would have a nutritionist over here, a sports coach over here, strength and conditioning coach would be very disjointed. So I guess part of doing it that way is to bring it all together and make sure it's coordinated.
Yeah, I think just naturally as the sport's progressed, there's more aero testing, there's more nutritionists, there's more kind of specialist areas. And I think unless you've got someone, like how I kind of describe it is, say we had 4 or 5 coaches on the team, each coach has 5 to 8 riders. You like project manage each rider, you're almost like the GP, and you control the access to the rider because you don't want 7 experts contacting the rider 7 times a day. So, you organize conference calls with everyone on the performance team that surrounds your rider, the nutritionist, the doctor, the S&C coach, the aerodynamicist, whoever it may be. And then you feed back information to the rider, so they're only getting the information they need and not stressing them out.
Yeah. And I must
Now,
admit,
now there's 6 nutritionists. Now there's 6 nutritionists, 5 coaches. There's so much more on the performance side.
must be an amazing for the role you have. Like, again, you mentioned earlier about sort of absorbing sponge information like a sponge from John, or even when you went to EF and you're dealing with let's call them external coaches and all different varieties and approaches, I guess. Again, in that performance role, you're learning obviously constantly. Then not in the, like you say, the specialist of nutrition, but sufficient to, again, we'll talk about your coaching business later, but stuff you can then take and learn. So it's I call it almost like it's like a senior director role, isn't it, within the performance area? And you just got your different specialists that you're feeding into you.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, you end up being responsible if performance isn't good. You have to explain why. But I don't mind that if I'm in full control. I'm happy to explain why something went wrong. I think being outside of pro sport now and working with more continental riders, Division 3, busy people, parents. Like now I'm realizing that, how much knowledge I've collected over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think when you're working with really, really intelligent people in high performance I don't know, I always felt like because you're always being questioned I always felt like you're not good enough. And it's only now that I'm interviewing for different roles, sending my CV off and being interviewed by people where I'm like, oh, you've got a great CV. Where I think it depends on your environment,
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and there's some of that that's, to me, listening to you there, that's again a bit of your imposter syndrome coming out, which again we all have and all forms part of it. And obviously you mentioned before we came on air, you've had a bit of time away from it. Yeah, it's that stepping away from the chaos, I guess, or the head down, drive side of it. So in Bahrain, then obviously there was years there of good success, obviously very high profile riders. How, when you're looking at the performance, there's obviously certain things that are controllable within that, and obviously the race environment to a large degree is or I believe from the outside looks fairly uncontrollable, from crashes to incidents to just better riders. Like I think KPI from a business wise, would you be let's say judged on like, we're here to win a race, for example, or perform or get a top 10, but if that rider doesn't perform for reasons outside of, let's say, sports performance, I presume, again, they're all mitigating factors and just part of the discussion you mentioned there. I'm happy to be challenged after an event. You then just look at, the athlete wasn't ready and this is why, he didn't do enough, I didn't do enough, or it might just be it's racing challenges. How does that work?
It really depends on who your performance manager is. If your performance manager is coach-led, scientific, and understands the process and how it's all about the process, all you can control is the process. You can't control the outcome so much. Then, yes. However, if you've got an outcome-focused performance manager who only is interested in how much the riders are being paid and what the race results were, then you're going to run into problems.
Yeah, okay. So we're looking here at going back to that the controllables, and then it's like, look, we did all the controllables, we did everything that's controllable. There's things that aren't outside it, and in theory, and I suppose if again from the outside, if I looked at how Sky, when they first came out, they were very much about the process. That was something, and you talk there, like, to me, like I've spoke to athletes, like an athlete, which is, it's all about the process, the outcomes. It's not irrelevant. It's obviously very important, but it's many aspects. It is what it is. You've done everything to that point. The result will be the result, and therefore, I mean, I've speaking to athletes who've kind of, it almost takes the weight off their shoulders, because it's like, as long as I've done the training, I've done the looking after myself. The uncontrollable things are just, I have a race incident or whatever. Does that sound about right?
That's my philosophy. I think when people are really outcome focused, or even especially with, say, young riders, it makes you really fragile, because as soon as things start going wrong or things aren't perfect, then their head starts to fall off a little bit, or as the event becomes closer and closer, things start to go wrong, because they've built this outcome up in their head that they need to achieve. And, obviously if you focus on the process and the things that you can actually achieve day to day, you're much better making your goals around what your systems and habits are than performance.
Yeah, interesting. So that reminds me of a conversation I had with, I'm sure you know Will, don't you, Will Draper, and he talks about his long-term vision for training fireman. He's very much, again, it's the process almost. He never said this, but just listening to him, it's like the results are coming now, but it's been kind of a number, and this is a long term. Obviously, you're probably reacting year to year as a business because you're trying to get sponsors on, or as a cycling team, trying to get sponsors, trying to quote provide results, unquote, whatever we define them as. But he's got this very much like the process works. The outcomes will come eventually. You've just got to trust that process, and that must be difficult because in teams like that. And I appreciate you mentioned it's maybe directed from higher above, whether that's in cycling or in business. But from a sport that unlike a football team, it might not be around forever. A couple of sponsors go and the team's gone. It must always be a hard balance of, look, convincing, I guess, sponsors as well. This is a long-term project. This is, you have to think more than beyond 1, 2, 3 years even. That must just always be a challenge in the sport.
Yeah, 100%. I think that creates stress for management above you, which then filters down to obviously the performance staff and the riders. But again, I think if you're focusing on the process, you're giving yourself the best chance of having a really good outcome. So for me, it doesn't change anything. Yeah.
Is that something, when you mentioned earlier days in JLT and maybe absorbing a bit from your brother and knowing some of the guys and obviously from the GB who were in Sky, do you think that's where for you that instilled in you that process driven is the way or not?
I don't remember being I remember I wouldn't say I've been so focused, or my philosophy to training and life has changed so much as I gained more and more experience. It's like, I remember when I was at JLT, I was coaching my brother who was in Team Sky, and he had some of his best results of his career when I was training him. And I look back at what I knew then compared to now, and I was useless. And I wish I could train Pete. I wish I could go back and with the experience I have now and now train my brother because he was so talented. I would love to do it, Like now, when I was a kid then, and I was training my brother who was older than me, and now I'm 34 and I'm training people that are 18 and 19, and like the dynamics are so different. Like, now I really respect my role and think of how much input you have into someone's career and their life. It's like a lot of responsibility where, I wish I could almost go back and have the experience then, But I think my philosophy's changed a lot in the last kind of 6 years.
And I guess it's being open, isn't it? A part of that being a good, whatever it is, leader or in your role. It's this, not, I guess, getting set in your ways and developing with the sport, I guess, as well as the performance side. So the question I have then, and it's starting to get into the specifics of cycling. So you look at something like Paris-Roubaix, which was on recently. We talked about EF. You might have seen this stat, but I think broadly speaking, the last rider to ride into the velodrome, although he was outside the time limit, he finished. His average speed, I think, would have got him potentially to win it 6 years ago. I think of all the years he's run 130 years. The development in this, and the point being that the development in the speed in the sport, and bearing in mind its background and its earlier, 20 years ago, had a big leg up due to challenges with drugs. It's now it's such a hockey stick of performance of what was pretty elite. Certainly Sky obviously pushed that boundary initially, I guess. Why, particularly in the last 5 years? It's again, just there's so much money being invested. There's so much science for all the areas from nutrition to sports performance to aerodynamics. 30 mile an hour they rode Roubaix out. That is mental.
Yeah, I think I don't think it was that advanced in the past.
Right.
As much as we think it was. And then obviously a combination of things like you said, nutrition, tires, equipment in general, aerodynamics, the level of the rider. People used to just people in the off season used to just put their bike in the garage for like 7 or 8 weeks and then turn up to the first camp 6 kilos overweight and do loads of hours and just go to races and slowly get fitter and fitter until like the Tour de France came along. Like the sport's changed so much, you know, they're in the gym in the winter, they barely go over 2 kilos in their weight. It's like the intensity is different, the training distribution's different, there's more money in it, better support staff, nutrition's changed the game completely. So yeah, I think once you add all of that up, and then we've also got genetically really gifted riders right now at the top.
So maybe there's that element, isn't it? But I look at like the guy Paul Peter Schicklas, is that how you pronounce it? And on decathlon, he's like 19, and the power that's able to output someone what I perceive as so young, is that a genetic thing for exact? Obviously, I'm sure you don't know the specifics of that rider, but is that a genetic thing? Is that he's just been in a living more of a, let's say, a pro lifestyle for a longer period of time? What's the thought of that 10 years ago, 5 years ago was?
I think the whole culture's changed. You know, back in the day, you had to earn your stripes, you know, equipment, race selection, your jobs in the race. So I think a lot of cycling in the past was learning by doing and trial and error. So you turn pro, you were put on a certain race program, you were made to go and get the bottles, you were made to go and fetch the rain jackets, and you had to kind of earn your respect and your stripes. You had to race the races to understand where the key sections were. Now you already have a fantastic base of training from when you were even a junior. You already have like expert nutrition. You don't have to make the mistakes to learn. Like now the information's already there. We've got all the data with training. We've got all the data with the route planning. People do loads of recon on all the races. So you've got a DS with loads of information in the car who's feeding you information all the time. Like you're not forced to make mistakes to learn. I think in the past maybe it was more like that.
So moving on to you finished with Bahrain before we came on air. I'm sure you don't like my saying you've had some, I suppose, time. You mentioned about finishing your masters, and I guess getting that space. And you were talking before we came on air. You seemed a happy person in regard to, I've stepped away. I've been like us all in our careers, taking a breath, but taking on. You've obviously been looking after athletes here and there, but now you've got your own coaching. So talk a bit about that. And again, you mentioned before about sort of third division to, you know, we've got I guess athletes that are family. That balance of as a coach and how you work with which. Say an example of some types of different athletes, from the very focused, I want to make a career out of it, to ultimately it is a hobby, albeit I want to be a high performing hobby.
Yeah, I think obviously I have a general kind of framework that I work from, but obviously you have to change it every case to case. But I think first of all, I just stopped working last year and was just you know, when you burn out and you just get really sick for like 2 months, and I was just couldn't do anything, couldn't have worked a job if I'd wanted to. So I just kind of didn't do anything for 6 months, basically. Slowly started to get better, but not fully. Only recently, actually, I got my bloods tested again for like the 1000th time, and my thyroid that caused me to stop cycling, like the active thyroid hormone, the T3, mine's super low. So I've just started taking hormone medication for that, and I'm hoping that'll fix me. But basically for the last year I've been pretty man down. So I needed a business, I needed to do something, and I just decided to just organically grow my private coaching business. So if I did end up without a team again, I had something to fall back on. And you know, in the previous years, the thought of coaching amateurs, I would have had zero interest in it because I was just so on the limit all the time. I wouldn't have found it. And even then, it's funny, that's what I mean about your mindset changing. It's only when you have time to breathe. Like now I'm really enjoying the coaching and speaking to different people. Like in the afternoon, 1 minute I'm speaking to a guy in Miami who I'm coaching. Then I'm speaking to someone in Abu Dhabi. Then I'm speaking to someone in Norway, and everyone's got such different backgrounds. It's kind of, it's quite fulfilling. more fulfilling than I thought it was going to be, I think.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
and then my process is really, have an initial call with them, get to know them a little bit, what's holding them back, what they want to do, what they consider successes, biggest challenges, that sort of thing. Give them a document to fill out, analyze their training data, send them a kind of rider report analysis that breaks down, biggest areas for improvement, where they're potentially going wrong in their training. And then obviously have different packages depending on the type of support you get. Yeah, that's basically it. Setting the training, linking them up with nutritionists. It really depends what package they sign up for.
Yeah. Okay. And do you help? Are you? And it sounds like obviously you talk there. You were kind of, I guess, on the limit. Again, I can relate to that experience. There's an element of, again, maybe burnout's the right word. So you just need to take a break when you're dealing with. Can you also sense then when you're speaking to athletes or you talk to them about you enjoying it? Because I guess all of this is about whatever you're doing in life. You've got to enjoy it, and why we often get focused. And again, I'll do challenges, whatever, someone's training for a sportif even, they can get very focused and you can lose. I guess it's easy, and I'm sure you've experienced this through your life. It's easy to lose sight that this is supposed to be fun, especially if you're not going to be professional. It's anything but. So is that mind thing conversations you have with athletes as well?
It's like the first thing I speak to them about, especially the client that has a full-time job and a family. Often they sign up, they pay the money, and what they think is sustainable isn't sustainable. So they're super motivated. They tell you they're available to train 6 days a week. They want to do it all. And often 3 months down the road, they can't maintain what they're doing. So I think with my own background, from my own kind of history, helps me just understand a little bit about like the whole load, what else is going on in their life, and how to periodize the training around it so you don't burn them out.
Yeah. And what would from an amateur?
If you're on the limit, you're not adapting. But that's the biggest thing that the pros have. It's recovery.
Yeah, that was a question. That was exactly what I was just going to ask. Even as amateurs, and I suspect I ride my bike probably 5 days a week, and I probably ride it too much, would be my guess. Albeit I enjoy it, and therefore, but I also, like anyone who rides their bike or semi-competitively, if you want to call it that, or even you're out with your mates, you want to be as fit as possible, but you're not perhaps giving your time. So is that one of the from what you've seen, I'll use the word amateur for the moment, of amateur cyclists or amateur sports people that they don't give enough rest because they're also working, they're trying to bring a family up, and it's trying to almost hold the athlete back, or that's how they'll perceive it anyway.
Yeah, I think just understanding what you're trying to achieve. Like, so many of the amateur athletes are just creating fatigue where they're not really creating a big enough stimulus to drive adaptation, and they're not recovering. They're just adding fatigue all the time. So I think it's the recovery, but also the distribution of the training. Often they're not doing progressive overload. They're not implementing, the basics of kind of training principles where they're progressing sessions and having rest periods at the correct time. Like, people sign up for coaching. They all want to know what supplements to take. They all want to know about bicarbonate. They all want the 1%, and they all want to add things, where often it's about removing something that is the biggest driver of improvement. So it might be with the pros, the world tour riders that are trying to lose weight, trying to do gym, trying to fuel for the races, trying to do beta alanine. You might be putting too many stimuluses in that are not allowing them to recover and adapt. But with an amateur or like the everyday person, it might be that they need to remove a bad habit, like, I don't know, going on their phone at night for 2 hours before bed. Like, I always say, you wouldn't set your alarm 2 hours early to scroll on Instagram and watch Netflix, but you'd stay up till midnight for no reason.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. They need a set of these, aren't they? Blue light glasses. Help you sleep.
Exactly. But also, this is the other thing. People become, I think elite sport and also even hobbyists, it attracts a certain type of personality. And even people wanting to do everything perfect, like getting sunlight in the morning, delaying the coffee intake, wearing glasses when you're on the screens, that also becomes a stressor for them because they can't this type of like thinking just makes you so fragile because everything has to be perfect all the time. Like
Yeah.
life's not like that, is it? So I think it's also being able to be flexible.
Yeah, and I guess I absolutely agree. And I guess looking back, certainly a lot of focus, certainly when I was, and it became a or more and more weight for cyclists became such a focus. And I even know athletes now that will, like I use the word athletes, hobbyists, that and they're weighing themselves daily, and they're so hyper focused on this one thing. And you see, fragile is a great word. It brings this fragileness to what should ultimately just be a hobby. And I suppose if it used to be, for me, a big thing was weight, but now you're adding in, blue light. Am I spent too long on my phone? Am I recovering well enough? I've had my protein shake, and there's like 100 of these things that are just weighing down on the athlete.
There's just too much. There's so much data, and
Yeah,
often
too much.
people don't even know what they're trying to test or what they're trying to monitor. Like people are dropping the ball on the main things, the fundamentals, and they're so focused on the 1%.
Yeah. Interesting. So I wanted to ask a question around where was I looking at? I think fueling, because I think you mentioned earlier, about nutrition, and that's been a big change. And again, maybe getting a little nerdy, but and I guess some of it, and I'd be interested to know from pro level. You look at pros like, oh, they can absorb 120 carbs an hour. I think the guy who won the Ironman recently, he was on like 180 carbs. They were saying an hour, which is mental. And then you've got your hobbyist, or again, do we again get hung up as again, we buy these cycling magazines and we look at the output. Are we getting hung up on again the pointy end of the sport when a lot of us, let's call it sports athletes, and I guess a number of them you deal with as well, and I guess maybe it's coming back to the same point that almost forget all the noise, just get back to basics, understand your training load, the recoveries, and then build the 1% on after that. And I guess nutrition is again a focus there without particularly talking. I don't want to talk about weight, but which is fueling and post fueling as well.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing about the fueling is not necessarily during the event. It's more being able to back it up the following day and throughout a training block. So I think if you're on point with your fueling over the course of 6 months, it compounds, day to day. You're able to hit bigger numbers over time, day after day, which obviously create bigger improvements. But I still think, it's just to a point, the majority of people are still fine on 90 grams of carbs an hour in an endurance event.
One of the things that struck me, I was following on social media, and you put a post out for one of your athletes. I think it wasn't a long period of time. It was like 9 weeks of, I guess, structure that you provided them, and their power numbers. Without getting into specifics of the power numbers, they were chunky improvement. I mean, this was obviously a good at just knowing what numbers broadly look like from power. They were obviously very good numbers and became very, very good numbers in a short space of time. That they're big wins very quickly. And I suppose, I guess, without particularly talking about that specifically, that client, is that just in that example, and is that often what you see that again because is that because the basics weren't getting done, and once you tweak that, help their recovery, that the numbers improves, and I'd call them dramatic. I looked at them and I was like, Timmy, where do I sign?
Well, that's the reason I posted it, obviously, but not everybody sees them improvements. I was just trying to find it while you were speaking, but with this rider in particular, it was a combination of factors. He was living in a Scandinavian country, so his overall training volume was fairly low throughout the winter. He was working full time but had flexible hours. And after about 2 weeks of me coaching him, he also went on a training camp to Spain where he actually overtrained, in my opinion, but it was a new athlete. I didn't have much experience coaching him. He's actually proved to have quite a big capacity to absorb the training load. And we saw massive improvements. I think he was training 14, 15 hours a week. And he come on a lot in a short space of time. But obviously, it depends where you're coming from. The first thing I do when I analyze the data isn't look for the 1%. It's to look for the low-hanging fruit that you can see improvements from.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I vaguely remember like one of his stats was 460 watts, whatever, 5 minutes, 1 minute, whatever it was, and it was up at 520 after 6, 8 weeks. But it's not just that. Yeah,
You need to you need to understand what it is you're trying to improve and what you're trying to monitor. So everyone's obsessed with FTP, functional threshold power. Sometimes your FTP, like how big does your FTP need to be? It's not a case of just getting your FTP to be the biggest number possible, depending on what races you're doing. Because depending on the demands of the race, you might have to sacrifice a little bit of your FTP to improve your VLA max or your anaerobic power. And, sometimes you can't have both. You need to give a little here to gain a little there.
yeah.
So it's not always about, what's your best 30-minute power.
Yeah, no, understood. Again, just staying in the slightly nerdy section, see zone 2 in his cycling was that, Pogacar, that's all he does. He's amazing zone 2. And then like you see commentary out now, well, don't forget to do zone 3. Do you look at these, and obviously through your career now, that there's elements of just phases that, and fad's the wrong word, and I have no idea if zone 2 is right or wrong, but do you think again that there's just everything gets a bit, there's just a focus in certain areas at certain times, and never to read into quote too much hype in any area at any one time. Take it with a sort of grain of salt. It just needs to form part of a bigger picture for an athlete.
Yeah, I think you've got to have like a good understanding of like what's the latest research, because you should still have a scientific, like that should underpin everything that you're doing. You also can't be stuck to that way of thinking either, because obviously the real world's different. I do think there's some key principles that work. Zone 2 works because you can do a lot of it. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily better than high intensity work for a shorter period of time. Depends really how much time you have available to train and what it is you're trying to do. I don't do a ton of zone 3 training with my riders. However, if there's a race where it really demands that they spend a lot of time at a certain wattage, I don't want them to have never touched that wattage, because they're probably not going to be that efficient at riding at it. So it really depends on what type of rider they are.
And there must be an element, I guess, of, appreciate you're not doing genetic testing as well, but I guess we're ultimately all different as human beings. So it's also understanding the individuals again, I guess, capacity.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's great when you've worked with a rider for 4 or 5 years, because every year you're slightly better at coaching them, because you understand and you learn from mistakes, or when to push, when not to push.
Yeah.
Obviously, every rider responds differently, but it's difficult to get to that level of you individualize the training depending on how they respond and what their characteristics are. Well, yeah.
Yeah. And do you for athletes, are you obviously ideally your athletes would be, they'll be giving you, I guess, training peaks, that type of thing. Is it that type of data that you're looking for from them?
Normally I have their training peaks, which, they can see the normal analytics dashboard, but I also have WKO, which is more advanced. So I upload their files to that, and that's where I do most of my analyzing.
Yeah. Okay. And then so you mentioned there, if you've got an athlete and they've got a sports nutritionist I appreciate in the pro space, you're very much a glue between them all. Is that less so, I guess, on a personal coaching perspective? You might speak to the athlete saying, how's your nutrition, how you getting on with your nutritionist, but I guess there's less collaboration just because he's got two support bodies.
Yeah, again, there's some riders that when budget's not a problem, they come to me and they say, okay, what should I get? And at Tim Kennaugh Coaching, we also have World Tour nutritionists that collaborate with me to work with.
Okay. So you can be that glue.
If they want to work with one of my World Tour nutritionists that I collaborate with, then we can give them that kind of pro setup. And
yeah. Okay, interesting.
Also, if someone comes and budget's not an issue and they really want to have the best, I can try and create that kind of pro support as much as possible around them.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So it's almost that, for the want of a better expression, that pro performance space, and that front glue. You've got your nutritionist behind you, maybe a strength and conditioning coach that are all feeding through to you. Oh, that's really interesting. Cool. Okay. Well, I appreciate this. 53 minutes goes really quickly on these podcasts. Tim, we mentioned before we came on air, I'd love to maybe get more nerdy, perhaps when you're back on the Isle of Man. As for those just audio listening, we're obviously online at the moment. So, but appreciate it. It's really insightful. I'd love to talk a bit more about leadership. We talked about that before we came on air, areas around that, and perhaps potentially when you're back on the Isle of Man, you might have new and additional jobs and opportunities as well. But appreciate the insights you provided today, and really good to chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciated the chat, and my first podcast. So
taking your podcast virginity.
Exactly.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Poor flimsy humans. Don't you wish you were flawless like me? A towering inferno of physical perfection?
I hate to pop your blimp-like ego, but you're not perfect.